Now, what would an end of season be without a glass of champagne and an unnecessary awards ceremony? And this podcast is no exception. So without further ado, we present the Simpson and Collins Awards. Yes, we have 12 of these highly desirable, invisible statues to give out. Owen, you've got the awards there. What do they look like?
The weird thing is they're all different shapes. I mean, this one here, which is actually for the Unsung Hero Award, I mean, it's sort of almost phallic in just its definition, except it's bright green. It smells a bit like porridge. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe we need to give these awards out before they sort of go off.
I think that's a great idea. Would you like to open the champagne for us,
I would.
Mr. Collins? We actually have a bottle of Prosecco just lying around the house, as you do. Mr. Collins, if you'd like to pop the champagne for us. If this goes everywhere, I'm going to kill you.
Your champagne. Hey!
Hey! That's good.
And that is the only time a Liverpool fan will hear a popping of a champagne cork this season.
Here we go. If you'd like to pour these out. Meanwhile, we'll go over. We have 12 distinctive categories. Each one of us will give a nomination, and then we'll decide on an overall winner. Thank you very much. With a lovely glass of champagne. Nicely poured, by the way.
Thank you.
Poured that in a professional manner there.
See, my degree is coming in handy after all.
Yes.
All those years working in bars.
Yes, of course. Let me take that from you. And if you'd like to, we'll do the first category, which is Best Young Player. Now, we had a bit of a chat about what this meant. We went with someone who didn't really appear in the first team, or didn't at all, from the academy, who had a good season, either in the academy or elsewhere. What's your nomination for Best Young Player?
Well, I've kind of gone down the middle with this one. As to whether to go for someone who's had a really good season out on loan, or who's had a good season sort of on the fringes of the first team. And as it is, I sort of went for neither. I went for, and this probably won't surprise you, Danny Ward.
Of course you went for Danny Ward.
Danny Ward has made quite a big step up this year. You know, he's appeared sort of on the fringes of first team before. He was actually taken on tour in Brendan Rodgers' first pre-season to the USA. Didn't actually play then, but was in the squad. And this year he's really kind of, through a combination of Brad Jones's injuries and just hard work in training and good results in sort of the reserve team and under-21 teams over the last couple of years, he's really kind of almost sealed the number 2 goalkeeper berth as his own. He was on the bench 23 times last season, which is an increase on...
He was only on the bench a couple of times.
He was on the bench once the season before against Stoke, and once the season before that against Swansea in the League Cup. So he's really come on, really kind of pushed himself into the first team plans.
He's earned a loan move, isn't he?
Yeah, he's now on loan at Aberdeen, Scottish Premier League side.
In Europa League.
In the Europa League, yeah. And he's already made some fantastic saves for them, like some fantastic displays. And I do really hope, even though we've lost Brad Jones, which would theoretically free up a place in the pecking order for Danny Ward to move up. We have then signed Adam Bogdan. So you could argue that despite a really impressive season, he's still got a lot of work to do.
He is very young, though, for a goalkeeper.
He is. I just hope that when he comes back from Aberdeen, he is able to kind of pick up where he left off. And I'm excited, and I'd really like to see him get, even if it's just a short run of games, I'd really like to see him break into the first team proper.
Yes.
And he's beautiful as well. He's a good-looking man.
Chap. I went for probably a more obvious choice. I tried to just pick the player who I think played best, certainly whilst out on loan last year, and that's Joao Teixeira.
Good shout.
Who went to Brighton last year, obviously. Who Brighton had a bit of an iffy season. Had Sammy Hippier as manager, didn't do very well. Sadly for Big Sammy. Then brought in Chris Hughton and Joao Teixeira. Then got sadly injured.
Yeah, he broke his foot, wasn't it?
He broke his foot. He was only out for 3 months, though, which is quite impressive.
He broke his foot in April and he's playing again this
week.
Well,
he played he's got 2 assists already in pre-season this year.
He's played excellently.
But I think last year, he scored some goals. He was a very important part of that side for a while. And I just think, as an academy graduate, he is the best shining example we had of a player who went away and played really well and proved that he's going to be a class act in the future. And that's kind of where I went with that one. So, those are options. It's Joao Teixeira or Danny Ward. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm leaning towards the fact that one of them actually played last year.
Yeah, I think that probably has a bit of a...
Danny Ward did get a few games at Morecambe, but... Oh no, he played 5 games for Morecambe.
Played 5 games, so he did play a few games. But obviously Joao Teixeira played a lot more than that.
Yeah, so I think just on the basis of actual performance in her first team, And we'll give it to Teixeira.
It goes to João Teixeira. Cheers. We're going to do this every single one.
We're going to be ratted by the time we finish.
The second category is one you wanted us to introduce. It's the, well, at least you tried award.
Yeah, this is a category for, that peculiar quality that, especially in Britain, we seem to love. I think the best example of this from sport is Tim Henman, someone who's never necessarily that successful, but you can't fault their effort, and you can never look back and think, well, he just didn't care. He was unsuccessful ultimately. He was, quite repeatedly unsuccessful, but he tried, and that's what we appreciate more. And so, yeah, this award is for that.
Yes, and my nomination is a player we've talked about quite a lot over the course of this podcast. It's Ricky Lambert.
Ricky
Lambert has, I think, embodied everything that we love as Liverpool fans. He's a true Scouse through and through, like we are, like our plastic Scousers that we are. And he God damn, he tried when he played. He may not have been the best player. He may not have suited the system.
He definitely wasn't the best player.
But he wanted to do so well, and I always admired that about him, and I want him to do well. And I think he embodies that spirit pretty much more than anyone else in the side. So that's my nomination was Ricky Lambert for that.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about this, and one of my nominations, I was thinking about giving it to the entire squad for the Champions League campaign. It seemed to be over before it had started. But I'm going to nominate Fabio Borini. Because last summer, casting our minds back 12 months, we accepted, I think it was a £14 million offer from Sunderland for them to make Fabio Borini their record signing. And we were like, yeah, God, bit their arm off.
Thanks, see you later.
And he said, no, I want to be a Liverpool player. I'm going to stay at Liverpool, and I'm going to prove my worth at Liverpool, and I'm going to turn down this move to a club where I'm already doing quite, I've got a sort of good reputation, I'm a fan favourite. And no, I'm going to fight for my place, and I'm going to become Liverpool's first choice striker.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he played 12 times in the league.
But he certainly fought at one point because he managed to get himself sent off at one point. It's Arsenal.
And a season later, one goal later, at least he tried.
At least he tried. And in fact, he scored in the very same game that Ricky Lambert scored as
a
well.
2-0 win over Villa, wasn't it?
Yes, it certainly was. Two very, very similar nominations, I think.
Similar but different, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying Borini always tried on the pitch, but for that initial moment of wanting to stay and fight, I think he deserves...
Ricky Lambert did the same, because if you remember, in the January transfer window,
True.
Aston Villa bid £5 million for him.
That's true.
And he said no, because he wanted to stay and fight for his place at Liverpool.
So I think maybe on that basis, we got to give it to the Scouse powerhouse himself.
Ricky Lambert.
Ricky Lambert. The Beetroot Packer.
Our next nomination, this is one that I really wanted to do. The best non-football moment of the year.
Yeah.
Now this is a moment that featured Liverpool players or Liverpool staff in some respect that wasn't on the pitch. Nothing to do with football, just a moment that kind of we absolutely adored from that. What's your nomination for that?
Well, I had two. And I was tempted to... anyone who saw the video really of the squad looking more happy than they deserved to be. A couple of days after the Stoke match, they went on a post-season trip to Dubai, and there's a now legendary video of Steven Gerrard leading the whole squad.
I think you mean this one.
That's the one.
That is the one.
And I thought, that's got to be up there. But actually, that's not my nomination. You said it doesn't involve Liverpool players or Liverpool staff away from the football pitch. But I've actually bent that slightly because it doesn't involve the players or the staff.
No.
It involves the fans. And it is very much connected with an event on the football pitch. Back in April, we played Newcastle. I think we beat Newcastle, like I've already forgotten. Did we
beat them 2-0 out at home.
Yeah.
The false 9 game.
That's it, yes. But around the 75th minute, my best non-football moment of the year came. The entire ground, all three sides of Anfield, Liverpool fans and all the away fans, naturally, rose to give a standing ovation. Jonas Gutierrez returned. It wasn't his first game back. I think it was like his second or third game back since recovering, beating cancer. Came onto the field, and just as every fan in that ground stood up, so did the hair on the back of my neck, and he got possibly the most deserved standing ovation of the season.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that is my best non-football moment.
That was magnificent, and I have to admit I slightly forgotten about that when I was doing my nominations. Mine, I've got a slightly different tack. In fact, I was going to go with the very video that we just watched.
Yeah, I thought you might.
It's all right, but I went for this.
Nivea Men Stress Protect Deodorant. Proven protection even in stressful situations.
Lads, we're late.
Works against stress sweating. Works against body odour. Nivea Men Stress Protect Deodorant.
There you go.
That's a hell of a nomination.
That was for anyone who doesn't know what that is Jordan Henderson, Simon Mignolet, and recently departed Raheem Sterling advertising Nivea products in a Reliant Robin.
Lads, we're lit.
Yeah, so a slightly different tack to your quite sincere and honest nomination. I went with an advert that those three players were involved in.
That's a hell of an advert. That's a good shout. I feel kind of sorry for the Colo Torre song video now that neither of us nominated it.
But we gave it the due attention it deserved.
And that was I think a fantastic moment.
I believe genuinely the moment that Jonas Gutierrez came on the pitch and Liverpool celebrated a man surviving can only be the winner for this category.
Yeah. However good Jordan Henderson's acting skills are.
Jonas Gutierrez. Our next one. So we've gone from the fun and the joy and the general pleasure that we've had over the season.
Yeah.
Most disappointing player, Owen. Yes, there are quite a few.
Yes, and a fair few of them could actually have been nominated for the best non-football moment, given some of their performances this year.
And I think this gentleman, more than anyone else, deserves that kind of consideration. Mario Balotelli.
Oh, what a shock!
I know, Mario Balotelli was he had a eventful time of it, to say the least. He maybe played well twice,
maybe 3 times.
Certainly Spurs away.
Swansea, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Crystal Palace when he came on in the cup, he took the free kick that Lallana scored the winner from. So I think he played well in that. But most of the time,
you could certainly count him on one hand.
Yeah, and most of the time, for every moment that he did well, there was a moment he posted something on a horribly racist thing on Instagram.
Oh yes.
I
mean, you've got to appreciate his efforts. We say he didn't put much effort in this season, but he did at least try to replicate kind of what we lost in Luis Suarez in one respect by being a bit racist.
Yeah, and just for all the excitement, and everyone thought at £16 million it wasn't too much of a gamble. Turns out it was.
It was. Yeah, I'd quite like that 16 million back, really.
Yeah. I quite frankly, I would take anything to get rid of him at the moment, which is a real shame, because I don't want to think about that with anyone.
No, but he deserves it.
Yeah. So that's my nomination.
Well, you sort of took the words out of my mouth there. So for most disappointing player, well, it's a player I'm disappointed in as much as one who disappoints me.
Yeah.
We gave him everything. We made him a star. We got him in the England squad. We got him in first team in the Champions League, over 100 appearances. Took him from a young, cocksure kid at Queen's Park Rangers and took him to the very top of the game. Challenging for titles, playing in Europe, playing against Real Madrid, playing for England at Wembley. Wembley, where before we came along, he'd only cycled past on the way home, doing a paper round and looking up on the arches and thinking, one day. And we took him. This little kid, he had skill, he had potential, but he was rough. He was a rough diamond, he had raw edges, and we finessed him. We turned him into a great player, and we, under the stewardship of Dalglish, he first got his big chance, he first got to show that he was really capable. And then under Rodgers, who has always been keen to give youth a chance, but this one in particular he built his team around. He made him the bedrock of the great Liverpool dynasty that was soon to come. and without Rodgers he wouldn't have been anyone. And then he said, I would turn down 900,000 a week. It's Rodgers is your problem, and if you sack him, I'll stay. Because no player in football on earth has the right to say that about their manager. No player is bigger than the team, but certainly no player can say, oh, well, sack the manager and I'll stay. And when players try to do that to managers, like Terry and Cole used to do a lot at Chelsea to get rid of Scolari, it used to drive me mad. And it sickens me that a player they can just exert enough influence, that they are blameless and touchless, and that no shit will stick. That they can get anyone sacked just to further their own agenda. So Raheem Sterling, not only have you disappointed me, but you've made me actively really quite angry. And I hope you go to Man City, and I hope you line up on the first day of the season in your sky blue, and you say, oh, I'm glad it's over. And I hope you think about the game about to happen, the 90 minutes where you're going to score a hat-trick against whoever the hell it is Man City are playing in the first game of the season. And you think about being borne aloft on the shoulders of your expensively assembled teammates all the way back to Carrington or wherever it is, Man United, but whatever Man City's training ground is called. Yeah, this is great. And think, and I'll go home and I'll look at my bulging wallet and I'll open the door and I'll have a vault like Scrooge McDuck full of gold, and I'll dive in, and as he swims through his bullion he'll pull out a massive jar of hippie crack and start puffing himself away on laughing gas, and I think, best thing I've ever done. Well, I hope that when you're lining up, dreaming of all of that, quite unexpectedly, one of the other defenders, a good proper Neanderthal throwback to 70s football, flies in, studs up, Roy Keane on Inge Haaland style, breaks your knee in 4 places and you never play again. Raheem Sterling, you are the worst that football has to offer. That's my nomination.
That's your nomination. So, your nomination.
But Balotelli's a good shout.
Your nomination happens to be probably one of our best players last year for most disappointing player.
Yeah.
And I think with that, Mario Balotelli, you were the most disappointing player. I don't think you can argue, really. The next award is quite an interesting one, actually. I'm quite interested to see what the nominations are. It's the I Cannot Believe What I've Just Seen award. Now, this is an award that we want to give out for a moment or a time or just a thing that happened where we just couldn't believe what we were watching.
Well, mine for this is it's bending real slightly because I didn't see it.
This isn't a good start.
I didn't see it happen. And it wasn't a moment, it was a whole series of moments that stretched on for about half an hour. But I remember I'd been at work, and as always when I was working, there was a midweek game, I got you to keep me adrift, because I worked evenings, keep me adrift by text message. And this particular Tuesday night, my phone was buzzing like it was nobody's business. I was like, what was going on? And our game against Middlesbrough had gone to extra time. And just as I was leaving work, Suso scored. I thought, yes! Oh, what a relief. Win 2-1 in extra time. And I just settled down onto my Southwest train thinking, I can go home, not needing to be embarrassed about going out of the League Cup to Middlesbrough. And then you text me. Penalty. Bamford. Goal. Oh, God. It's gone to penalties. It's fine. We're Liverpool, then Middlesbrough. We'll surely have them on penalties. Be easy. Like 3-1. And on it went. On and on and on. Waterloo, Vauxhall, Clapham Junction, Putney. I was at Richmond by the time that game finished. I'll say I didn't see it, but just that, literally sat there in disbelief. And there were some Arsenal fans coming back from the game because I think they'd lost that night, and they were following it as well. And we all just sat there in shock, saying, "He scored! Hey, he scored! He scored! Hey." 9-9. That's Mignolet. He scored.
The goalkeepers have scored.
Yeah. And it's like, we're starting again. Back to Balotelli, and he scored. Back to Suso, and he scored. And it was endless.
It wasn't.
And I could not. And I sat there just thinking, what the hell is going on? So my nomination is, despite not seeing it,
the penalty shootout.
The penalty shootout versus Middlesbrough. I could not believe what I'd just seen.
Incredible. It was incredible. My nomination takes a slightly different tack. It was Gerrard's minute against Man United. Quite honestly, the moment it was the moment I turned round, like I discussed earlier, and I saw a red card on the screen and Gerrard leaving 45 seconds after he'd bloody come on, and then I saw that he'd stamped on the guy, and It was just a minute that you couldn't believe you were watching. This was Gerrard. This is the guy who represents Liverpool.
Yeah.
This is everything we believed in for 10, 15 years. His last game against Man United, he's just come on and he's walking off the pitch, and less than a minute later, it was just unbelievable. Like, I was so disappointed more than anything else. Like, that was, as you say, we knew he was leaving. It was just such a letdown almost. To think that, Gerrard's going to come on and inspire our team and we're going to pick ourselves up.
Pick us up from a scruff of a neck.
And suddenly we're down to 10 men. It was unbelievable. And that's kind of the definition of the award. So, we have two
This is going to be tight.
very distinct categories, because in very, very different ways they were both utterly remarkable. I think Gerrard's stamp and the sending off, it was a real shock to everyone, and it was a moment that was unbelievable. But to go to a penalty shootout like that, 14-13, goalkeepers scoring, young like youth team players on the pitch scoring penalties. Don't forget, earlier on in that game, Jordan Rossiter had scored inside 10 minutes. That in itself was incredible.
That whole game was mental.
That whole game represents, probably the most unbelievable moment of the season, and I think we should toast to our League Cup tie with Middlesbrough.
Yes.
Our next category. We've had some positives. We've had some fascinating things. It's time to remember some of the uglier side of the season. This is the worst moment award.
Worst moment.
And there are quite a few to choose from.
What? You could choose several that we've already had.
Yeah. So my nomination, quite an fairly obvious one, really. The loss in the FA Cup semi-finals for Aston Villa was a really dark moment, because everything was gearing up to get Gerrard to Wembley in the final. And we did get Gerrard to Wembley, technically.
We did, yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily the result so much as the manner of it. In such a big game, and such an important game for everyone. To be so pathetic and to go out just in such a whimper was just... It just felt like a dark moment, I think.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And it was actually... It made me so thankful that we'd lost, seeing how we played, because if we'd won and played like that against Arsenal in Gerrard's last game, it would have been absolutely humiliating.
Remember, Gerrard's last game was against Stoke, and that was pretty humiliating in itself.
Well, that brings me on to my nomination, which actually wasn't the 6-1 game against Stoke, because that got to the point where it was so awful, a perverse part of me was almost enjoying it. Like, it was just, it couldn't get any worse.
You quite enjoying the sadism?
Well, yeah, maybe enjoy is the wrong word, but it was just... It was almost, I didn't believe it was happening. So it's like having a bad dream and saying that's the worst thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
It was unreal. So my worst moment was the game before, Gerrard's Anfield farewell, and all the moments, all the like folklore of Anfield. So many modern parts of that have come from Gerrard. The game against Olympiacos is probably the most famous. And he was Mr. Anfield, and it's no sort of coincidence by the time he retired, he was the only Scouse player in the team, Flanagan being injured for most of the year. He was... he grew up walking past Anfield, he grew up going to Anfield, and Anfield was Gerrard's home. And so, in some ways, the 3-1 defeat to Palace hurt even more than the 6-1 defeat to Stoke, because there was such an atmosphere, there was such a party, and everyone was ready. Although we had nothing to play for, the one thing we did have to play for...
we did have something to play for.
The one thing we had to play for was giving Gerrard the send-off that this famous old stadium should have given him. He'd given that stadium and he'd given those fans so much down the years, and it was time it'd given a lot back, but it was time to really show its appreciation. And they did. It was just the team didn't turn up, and it just fell apart. 3-1 defeat, and it was just, all I could think when I was watching it was Stevie deserves better. And same with Stoke, but just from his last game at because I always said that it was wrong that Steven Gerrard's last game for Liverpool should come at the Britannia Stadium. It should be like Carragher. He should have a proper send-off and a lap of appreciation and all of that. And while we did all that, it was tainted by the fact that we'd played so badly, and that's my worst moment.
Yeah, no, well, unfortunately I can't, because I didn't, wasn't able to see the game. I can't share with you in that moment, but yeah, we had quite a few bad times, didn't we, throughout the season? I mean, these are two of, you mentioned a third one as well, the 6-1 to Stoke, and I mean, but it's tough.
You could pick any of our Champions League games, really.
You really could. The 3-0 at home was probably the worst of those, for sure. It's a tough one, it is. I guess the one thing is, the the Palace game was Gerrard's farewell, but thankfully it didn't mean anything to our season.
Yeah,
whereas the Villa game became everything.
The Villa game was what meant we had nothing to play for against Palace.
And that was, and with all the hype and excitement around getting to the FA Cup final and just being in a final, apart from anything else.
And the fact it was at Wembley, it was on a national scale.
And it was an underwhelming performance as we've put in all season.
And bloody Benteke scored.
Well, he's not going to be bloody Benteke anymore, is he?
Yeah.
So I think the FA Cup semi-final, our worst moment of the season. All right, let's cheer ourselves up.
He's getting maudlin.
We're going into some of the more positive ones now, and now we're going with the Unsung Hero Award.
Unsung Hero. Well, there's a couple you could say for this, but I'm going to go for. I was tempted to say Javier Manquillo because I really don't think he's got the credit he deserved. And indeed, now he's gone, and he never will.
we won't again now.
Yeah, but no, after 93 consecutive starts, Simon Mignolet was dropped. Brad Jones comes in. I've got a lot of time for Brad Jones, as I've detailed earlier. Lost 3-0 to Man United. Not exactly the greatest game of Brad Jones's life, I'm sure. But thank you. But Simon Mignolet, wasn't playing well, and he was dropped. And he responded to that admirably, and he came back and he kept clean sheet after clean sheet. In fact, I've got the stats here.
There was some point at which we kept 6 clean sheets in a row, wasn't
there?
Away games or something.
Some sort of record, and overall we had 18 clean sheets last season.
Didn't he almost win the Golden Glove?
Yeah, he came very close. It was just the kind of last couple of games that let him down, really.
In Courtois, didn't he win or something?
Yeah, but Chelsea and Palace and Stoke sort of took that from him. But 18 clean sheets overall, only one of which wasn't Simon Mignolet's, and that was 16 minutes from Brad Jones.
Yeah, and then the rest from Mignolet.
And if you compare that to last season, so it was 14 in the league this year, 18 overall. Last year was 10 and 12. Yeah. So really, really sort of.
He stepped his game up when he came back in.
Not all of those were Simon Mignolet as well. Actually, 2 of them were in the FA Cup with Brad Jones.
Of course.
So we really did it's what you want in a player. When you drop a player, you do it so you give him a kick up the jacksie, and it did exactly that. And he responded perfectly to that.
He really did,
and he came back stronger than before, and for that reason, and he didn't get much credit for it. And though
not as much as he deserved. No.
Yeah, and though our defence was credited as being stronger than last year, the fact that Simon Mignolet had got so much better just from the start of the season, when he was a bit sort of flailing at best, I think he deserves recognition. So he's my unsung hero.
I think that's a very, very good shout. Mine's probably a bit more obvious as unsung heroes go, but I went with Martin Skrtel. I think. For all of our fantastic attacking play and our vulnerable defence, it's incredible how much work he does that you never really realise. Like the clearances he makes, the tackles he steps in, his positioning and movement. When we went to the 3-4-3, he played in the deepest line defensive position, and his job was basically to mop up everyone else's mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. Time and again, he would come in behind the other centre-back and clear the ball.
Like a big Slovakian sponge.
Exactly. And actually, he does it. He never really asked for anything. He only got a bit shirty about the contract at the end of the season, but he's now signed, thankfully. And I think with Martin Skrtel, you never really... He's such an important part of the team. He's like... You talk about first names on the team sheet. Would anyone go above Martin Skrtel at the moment? I can't think of anyone else who should go in there. Like, I would not put Dejan Lovren and Nodi Sacco in the centre-back team.
Defensively speaking, yeah.
And Skrtel covers up for so many errors that the other players make.
Because we make so many errors.
And so, but without him, we would be a disaster.
Great show.
And so that's my nomination is a very big number 37 at the back of our team, who will probably kill me if I don't nominate him.
Yeah. So, you wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley, that's for sure.
No.
Or even a particularly light alley.
Yeah. He seems. Yeah. I'm not sure I want to meet him at all.
I would. I'd quite like to give him a hug. I reckon he's quite cuddly.
Big bear hug.
Big bear hug. Break my spine.
But I tell you what, I hadn't really thought about Simon Mignolet in the way, and your passionate and articulate arguments for his, the way he came back into the side was so impressive, and I'm less worried about him now than I was. Maybe this time last year, and I think you're right. He doesn't get the recognition he deserves for bailing us out of trouble more often than we maybe remember. So,
because a keeper only gets remembered if they make a mistake. If they make a clean sheet and just unless they make a really fantastic save, it's no one remembers.
I think for that, Simon Mignolet is our unsung hero.
Congratulations, Simon.
So here we are at Game of the Season. This is the match that we remember most as being just the best, the game we enjoyed the most, or the game that was most important, or just a game that we remember as being the best that we had all season. My nomination is going to surprise you actually, because it's not.
Is it the Aston Villa Cup semi-final?
Yeah, for so many reasons. No,
away to Stoke.
Mine is the 2-1 against Man City.
Right.
The 2-1 victory, and I told the story earlier about me being hungover and watching the game, but more than any other game in the entire season, that gave me a huge amount of hope that actually things could have gone right. I came out of that game having beaten Man City, a team that we famously are not the best against, with an incredible renewed optimism. It was the way we played as much as the fact we won. You know, the 2 goals were both incredible as well. Don't forget that. You know, Henderson and Coutinho scored absolutely fantastic strikes. But I think that game gave me so much hope that we were going to go on and get into the Champions League, and everyone was talking about it at the time and saying, and I didn't really believe it until that game, and I think for that reason alone, that's my game of the season.
That's a good shout. And I would be hard pushed to beat that. My nomination is along similar lines in terms of a game where you really thought, hang on, this is possible. And it was a bit earlier in the season. It was a 4-1 win against Swansea.
Okay. Is it because we scored the most goals?
Well, it's because we scored the most goals, but also I think for the first time all season we didn't just flatter to deceive. We properly looked like the team we'd been the previous season, and it seemed to me that we were finally remembering what we'd done, just in terms of a style of football, the tempo, the fact we'd scored a load of goals, and the way sort of the new signings really sort of bled in. Like sort of obviously Lallana had the game of his life, and I think that was when I really thought, right, now we're going. This is it. Kind of, we're off the mark. And for the whole of like September and October and November, we'd been it wasn't right. We're trying to fit like sort of a square peg in a round hole.
Yes, certainly.
And then at last it just clicked, and something went right. And I remember being so excited for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And so it proved him that was kind of the start of our sort of unbeaten run. Well, technically Burnley was, but that was the start of kind of the flair of our unbeaten run.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We actually looked like a team, and we were playing with real
and
flair.
It was just such a kind of. It really provided something that we hadn't had all season, just to the fans, just that kind of excitement, and and having a team to be proud of, and a team that we were excited about watching. And for me, that was my game of the season. But it kick-started the unbeaten run, which I think the Man City game was part of, and beating Swansea isn't a struggle for us anymore. Beating Man City was much more of a shock.
I don't think people expected us to win that.
The best thing about Swansea was how we played, rather than the calibre of the opposition we beat. Even though Swansea have been tricky, whereas Man City, it was both the style of play and the calibre of the opposition.
And the goals as well.
And the goals. So I'm happy to make our win against Man City game of the season.
Game of the season. Goal of the season. It's an easy category. Everyone understands goal of the season.
Yes.
Owen Collins.
Straight back to that Man City game. Philippe Coutinho, second season in a row, he scored an absolute beast against Man City. And I could just repeat a lot of what you just said in just how much it meant in terms of significance.
Yeah.
Both in terms of the hope it gave us and the kind of just the standard. In fact, like if you just take it as itself, it was a phenomenal goal. The fact it was against such strong opposition, like a strong defence, and the fact it meant we'd beaten Man City, and all in all, just bosh.
Yeah,
against Man City.
That's a fantastic shout. To be fair, Coutinho could have his own goal of the season competition. You think the goal against Bolton, the goal against Blackburn, the goal against Villa in the Cup semi-final was really good as well. But mine is actually another Coutinho goal, but it's his against Southampton, which I think aesthetically was probably the best goal of the season. 35 yards out, and he's postage stamped it right at the top corner with a strike in the pouring Southern Coast rain.
Atmospheric.
From 3 minutes into the game as well. It's not like he literally straight into the game, and just from out of nowhere, the magician just pulls a rabbit out of the hat, and it's incredible.
What a rabbit!
It was extraordinary. It was, I think, I haven't. As I say about the kits, that kit reminds me, like whenever I think about the third kit, that's the goal that comes to my mind, because it was such a surprise and so unexpected, and we hadn't really scored that many incredible goals this year.
No.
Not like with the Suarez and Sturridge era, where, frankly,
every other goal was just a beautiful.
Quite frankly, he had his own goal of the season tournament in one game, Suarez, against Norwich.
Yeah,
So, the amount of times he scored. But that was a moment of absolute, extraordinary joy. I just couldn't, it was, for me, nothing was better than that goal. But having said that, the meaning of the Man City goal, as well as the strike, are probably running in parallel, I think. I don't know what are your thoughts?
I would say, in terms of contextually, the Man City goal has got much more significance.
Yes.
But I think probably in terms of the actual goal, maybe Southampton just edges it.
Yeah, it's tricky.
And it is nice to have a good way to look back on that kit.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we didn't have many other moments to celebrate wearing that kit.
M.A. Chan getting sent off.
Exactly.
That's basically it.
So I would say, given that we've given the Man City win the game of the season,
yes,
let's give Coutinho against Southampton the goal of the season.
Goal of the season. So now we come to... we talked about the worst moments of the year.
Yeah.
What about the best moments of the year?
Well,
this is an interesting category.
Over to you.
Yeah, indeed. Now, unfortunately, we're about to talk about Coutinho's Man City again for the exact same reason that you just talked about. In terms of just everything that game meant and everything that goal meant. It was the joy of me running around the flat, thinking we're going to do something great here. I don't need to go into it any more detail. It was the best moment of the year for me.
Well, my best moment of the year is actually something that's previously been nominated as worst moment of the year. I think it's Manchester United. Gerrard coming on. Comes on off the bench. Well, I'll tell you for why.
Okay, it's your best moment of the year.
Comes on off the bench. And there was a lot of shock that he hadn't started in his final game against Man United, and he'd started on the bench. Spent the first half looking out from the dugout, and he comes on, and Henderson gives him the captain's armband. It's like, this is it, Captain Fantastic, do us proud, bring us up, take us by the scruff of the neck, and let's beat Man United. 40 seconds later, throw it down on Herrera, and he's off. But before he goes, he takes the captain's armband off, and he gives it back to Jordan Henderson. And I remember you saying at the time, it was almost like Rodgers had said, right, we need a symbolic handover moment. On you go, give it about a minute, find a way to come off again, give it to Hender. And because we said when we were talking about what best moment means, in terms of its long-term significance as much of a kind of in-the-moment significance. And I genuinely do think that when we next lift the Premier League title, it will be Jordan Henderson that holds the trophy aloft.
You think so?
I do.
That's a bold claim.
I genuinely think it will. Because I think he will be our captain now for a good sort of 10 years.
I think you're right.
And I definitely think we'll win the league within the next 10 years.
That is a bold statement.
And I'm going to say now that if we don't, I will do 2 shots of hot sauce.
Done.
It was a horrible moment, and it was, like I said, it was just utter disbelief, and it was utter horror.
Yeah.
But it was also, in terms of just the immediate aftermath, when he takes the captain's armband off, it was the end of an era. And, as they say, one door opens, another door closes. Well, when one door closes, one opens.
That's how it goes.
That's often how draft works. And as that era ended, at the same time, the new one began. That was really when Henderson's captaincy started, much more than this season. And I think for that reason, because I think that although we haven't seen it yet, and this is kind of speculative, that is going to have such significance. That's going to be the first, when Henderson takes it off Gerrard again. And it's a shame the way it did happen.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But it happening was my moment of the season. That handover.
So it's the handover of the captain's armband and
as
the
much
passing
as
of the
sending
dynasty.
off. Rather than the actual stamp.
Rather than a stamp on a Man United player, which originally
which I'm also in favour of.
Yeah, I could agree with you there. Well, considering that we've given Man City enough credit, that game and that goal, enough credit for what was ultimately an underwhelming campaign anyway, I absolutely think handing the captain's armband deserves that moment of the year.
Understand.
And now it's the moment you've all been waiting for.
Yes.
It's the one everyone wants. You're talking about it in the streets. You're tweeting about it with your Twitters. It's the Player of the Year award.
Player of the Year.
Owen Collins, who was your Liverpool Player of the Year for 2014-15?
Interestingly, given that he's been nominated for Unsung Hero, I had considered Skirtle, but No, my player. I mean, surprisingly, actually, there are a few contenders. None of them had spectacular seasons, but a lot of them had very good seasons. Because I think you have to view it in light of the general campaign. No one could really have a spectacular season when we came 6th.
No.
God, we didn't even come 5th.
No. But, Spurs beat us in the end.
Yeah. Even though we did the double over them. But my player of the year is going to be Jordan Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
He's put in a great shift. Goal scoring wise, he's come up with some important goals. He's never given less than 100%, and even he's somewhere between the kind of. He's obviously a much better player than Ricky Lambert, obviously, but he's also one of those players whose effort will always sort of outweigh his talent.
Yeah.
In the same mould as sort of maybe Dirk Kuyt, in that he's an absolute cart horse and will do a fantastic job of just running until his lungs explode, and won't always have much to show for it. But that shouldn't take away from the fact he cares so much, which is more than some of our star players have shown in the last few weeks that they couldn't give a damn. Henderson, wouldn't do that, hasn't done that, and has deservedly been given the captaincy. And also, as you pointed out earlier, he's a fantastic actor.
He is, isn't he?
And he is willing to completely engage in the sort of the slightly naff side of a club. To sell a few more shirts.
Yeah. And
also watching him over the last few weeks at the start of a sort of tour when we landed in Thailand. It's always weird, these kind of moments. They land and they get given like flowery garlands.
Yeah, they'll do those photos and stuff.
Yeah, and often they all look a bit confused or a bit kind of awkward or like, I just want to get to the hotel and play FIFA. Whereas Henderson, every picture he's beaming. He looks genuinely grateful to be there and really appreciative of the support.
Some people would say that he should be.
Well, true. But I think he is as well as a fantastic player. He is still not hit his peak.
No.
And he is a great ambassador for the club. And he is my player of the season.
I think that's a fantastic shout. And so my nomination, probably the most obvious one, is the one who got voted Player of the Year at the Liverpool Club Awards. It's Philippe Coutinho. I think throughout the year, in terms of who was the best player, and who is currently now, especially, the best player in the squad, I think Philippe Coutinho is the best footballer we have now. Yeah. His goals dragged us through 2 FA Cup replays.
Yeah.
That Man City goal that we've talked about, the goal of the season that we've talked about.
The goal against Aston Villa we've touched upon. We
talked about the pass for Sterling against West Ham, which I should put in my pass. If we had a pass of the season award, I can't think of anything better than that at the moment. With when Suarez left, there you could clearly see there was a time where we didn't have anyone to pick us up or anyone to do a little something special just to find a gap and get a goal. Coutinho does that, and he's a genius, right? I think his footballing brain is extraordinary.
He has got the spark that.
No, how many Premier League players have that? Not just at Liverpool. How many players in the Premier League are as talented, clever?
Yeah,
and I think he got voted in the Team of the Year, and a lot of people were very annoyed.
Yeah, I didn't understand why there was such hostility to that.
Because apparently Cesc Fabregas was better over the first half of the season.
Yeah,
it is half and half of the season. That's not the point. But Coutinho was in the Team of the Year as well. And you can't forget that his peers think he's a genius, and if that's the case, he is doing something very right. So yeah, that's my nomination. Two very good players, and I think 2 very important players for our future.
And 2 quite different players, I think.
Hugely so. However, as much as I think Coutinho was a fantastic player, the one thing I would say about Jordan Henderson is he was probably the best player over the entire campaign. Because Coutinho didn't start out great.
Coutinho was a sort of 6 becoming a 9. Whereas Henderson
was a consistent 7.5.
Henderson was never a 9, but he was a 7.5 all the way through.
Yeah, and I think Coutinho only really came good when we moved to the 3-4-3, and he suddenly had freedom to play as he wanted in that structure and that system, and I think that was the moment he unleashed himself, because before he actually wasn't that great. But I think Jordan Henderson, for his effort, work rates, what he means, what he gives to the club, what he's slowly becoming to mean for the club.
Yeah,
the fact he's now on the cover of FIFA 16.
Exactly. I think he's the new talisman.
I think you can see when things are getting heated on the pitch. Like when Sterling was kicking off a couple of times, you could see Hender was the one running up, grabbing him and going, stop, let's get this sorted.
He's got an awareness of his responsibilities to the club as a
really
figure.
Does. He's a real leader. I don't think people see that because they just think, he just runs. Is Hendo running? Yeah, he's always running. But I think he deserves to be the player of the year for having the best overall campaign.
I'm willing to give it to him.
Henderson. All right, we're at the last award. And there ain't no nominations for this one because it's the Lifetime Achievement Award. Quite frankly, we were going to do nominations, but there's no point because we need to talk about Steven Gerrard.
Oh, is that who it's going to be?
It's going to be yeah. Lifetime Achievement Award will go to Steven Gerrard.
I was giving it to Adam Bogdan.
yeah. Of course, that makes sense. No, in all seriousness,
He's done well.
Steven Gerrard has meant an awful lot to our club and to me personally for a very long time, and this pokey little podcast doesn't begin to do justice to just how important a player he has been for Liverpool. What are your memories of Steven Gerrard?
I mean, they're mainly anecdotal, but I think he's one of those players where he just sort of spews where you were moments. Lying in bed with the Radio 5 live on, because it was sort of, I was quite young then. It was sort of past my bedtime, about 10 o'clock. Or rather, I'd had a long day. Anyway.
Yeah, you do when you're 9.
12.
12, yeah.
Listening to us winning 2-1 against Olympiacos, but it wasn't enough.
No.
And it got to the 86th minute, I think. And I remember just lying there in bed thinking, really thought we'd do it. And then, almost out of nowhere, bosh, ball comes down, in it goes, and I was up bouncing on the bed, screaming. And I had a cabin bed, so I was banging my head on the ceiling. I was just like, and that moment sort of, it was the first time I can remember Gerrard really saving us. But my God, so many times that I spent half time at Istanbul telling my family that if Man City could come back from 3-0 down against Spurs with 10 men and win 4-3 just a couple of months before, then Liverpool could easily do it, because Liverpool were way better than Man City in 2005. And all it took was that Gerrard header. And these words that I'd spoken, which I was more saying just to stop my family having a go at me, I finally actually started believing. And that's what Gerrard did. He didn't just give us goals, and he didn't just give us passion, he didn't just give us fantastic performances. He gave Liverpool fans hope. And he gave Liverpool fans belief in Istanbul, at Wembley a year later. Twice.
There aren't too many people who have an FA Cup, their entire final named after them.
Stanley Matthews was one, Steven Gerrard was the other. There's been attempts to call 2001 the Owen Cup final, but it never really took off.
Not to the same extent.
Because, that was 2 goals in the last minute, 2 great goals. But overall that game was Arsenal's. Whereas that cup final, it wasn't even the fact that Gerrard won it for us. He drew it for us. He got it level. He didn't score the winning goal in Istanbul. He didn't even take a penalty in Istanbul, because he wasn't a match winner so much as he was a match saver. He didn't win matches. He gave everyone else the power and the belief to win matches as well. Because if it hadn't been for Gerrard's volley at Wembley, Reina would never have saved that penalty.
No, he was full of cramp as well, remember that time? He'd gone down like 10 minutes before.
Yeah, if he hadn't scored that first goal against Istanbul, I don't think Smeets would have scored the second and made himself a hero. I don't think Alonso would have scored the equaliser.
After the penalty miss, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think Dudek would have saved the penalties. He wasn't just a hero in himself, he made the people around him heroes.
Yeah. Gerrard
was a player that, and the reason I think he is the best player Liverpool has ever had was that Dalglish played in such a strong team, and you could look at any other player like the Dalglish era and think they're a Liverpool legend. Gerrard was playing alongside Igor Biscan, Jimmy Traore, Antonio Nunes, Fernando Morientes, Ryan Babel, Yossi Benayoun, Vladimir Smeet. He made these players as good as him. He made the worst player 10 foot tall, and that's something that only really one other figure has been able to do in Liverpool's history, and that's Bill Shankly. Bill Shankly, who just through his words could make the most average player a colossus. And Gerrard did that just by playing alongside him. And I think to be able to do that through no other method than just being with them speaks volumes about what a player he was. As I say, not only was he a hero, but he wasn't always our best player. But we wouldn't have had a best player if it wasn't for him being on the pitch.
But he was as much as we always obviously. You can talk all to the hills all day about how much he means to Liverpool. He was he's an extraordinary footballer. Extraordinary. Like when you have the likes of Zinedine Zidane and Thierry Henry saying he's the best player I've ever played against, and he played for us. That is some thing to have above the fact that he is Liverpool through and through. Above the fact that he drove the team on and inspired them. he's just an incredible all-round footballer. And
you have to wonder what he would have achieved in his career if he'd been playing in a team that was consistently good.
He was a day away from going to Chelsea, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he was a day away.
Hours away from it.
He'd already agreed. He handed in a transfer request, and then that night there was a night. I remember hearing the story of a night he didn't sleep all night.
He couldn't do it,
because he'd seen all the fans going, please don't leave, and he changed his mind and signed a new contract. And I think that's, you talk about Fabian Delph and football loyalty. Obviously, it's slightly different, but Steven Gerrard showed just what an incredible human being he was above all that.
And he was, as I say, he could have achieved so much in his career. He could have won the league half a dozen times.
Oh yeah, easily.
He could have won the Champions League another 4 times.
Easily.
He could have more he could have twice as many medals currently hanging in his cabinet. But he doesn't, because he wanted to win them with Liverpool. I think that speaks volumes.
Exactly.
And if you're listening, Raheem Sterling, maybe think about that.
He doesn't come from Liverpool, to be fair.
No, true, but he doesn't come from Manchester either.
No.
But it's more just that he wanted to, Liverpool gave him everything, and he gave them twice as much back. And it's a mark of respect that he still mentions people like Steve Highway in interviews. For the academy director, when he first came through as an 8-year-old, it's partly the fact he's Liverpudlian, but also I think because of his stature as a person, that he is always aware of the traditions he's in. And he's aware of the kind of the long line of Liverpool greats that he comes in, and he's aware of the kind of position he occupies in the pantheon of Liverpool legends.
Yeah.
And that kind of self-awareness, that kind of almost groundedness. He's always kept his feet on the ground, except for that header in Istanbul. And
always foot in under Herrera.
Yeah. Yes. And it's meant that everything he has done has taken on that much, like that bit more sort of magic. Like that hat-trick against Everton. Any player that scores a hat-trick in a Merseyside derby for Liverpool is going to be remembered.
Of course.
But when it's Gerrard, it just becomes like he almost created his own myth.
He was an enigma unto himself.
Yeah, and he built his own legend, and he kind of, but without ever becoming a sort of pretentious, sort of self-aggrandising.
He never came across as an arrogant person.
No.
At all.
And I'll tell you what else I'll always remember. Because we said, he's not like Delph. But he could also be spectacularly stupid.
Again, like putting a foot in Herrera. Yeah.
Putting a foot in Herrera, but the 5-3 win over Luton in the FA Cup third round in 2006. And in the interview after the match, I don't know if he was just knackered, but he was leaning against, that board that they have behind interviews. And his legs must have just given way, and he just slipped on his arse. And as he pulled himself up, he said, "Oh, I hope that doesn't go out live." Completely not thinking how live television works.
Yeah, BBC FA Cup.
Yeah,
of course.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it was this. Yeah.
So that's a happy memory of Gerrard not connected with football.
No. It's weird to think that we are now a team without Steven Gerrard in, because for as long as I've supported Liverpool, Steven Gerrard has been at Liverpool, because I obviously started going into football when I was maybe 7-8 years old.
Yeah.
And that was when he was just coming through. But he was always an important player. Just everything. The 2001 treble that we got, he scored.
Yeah.
I remember him scoring, was it against Man United, from 30 odd yards?
Yeah.
And that was you almost thought, well, this is, he was such an important player for us then.
Even in his mad moments, even in the sendings off, because I think he holds the record for most red cards for any Liverpool player.
That doesn't surprise me.
No.
But I'm almost glad of it.
It's even hard to be annoyed because it showed he cared, do you know what I mean? There were times last season I would love to have seen Mario Balotelli be bothered enough to stick a foot in Ander Herrera's stomach.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I would love to have seen, Raheem Sterling getting wound up enough to kick someone down the arse from behind.
Yeah.
Gerrard, even when he was like, "Oh God, why have you done that?" Even when you're slightly ashamed of him, you still thought,
you knew he was doing.
Isn't it great? He cares enough to get sent off.
He always had the right intentions,
most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just. So he's the only player in the history of football to score in the FA Cup final, the League Cup final, the UEFA Cup final, the Champions League final. It's to my eternal regret that he didn't score one in the FIFA Club World Championship final against Sao Paulo in December '05, because that would have completed the set. But
literally every cup final he could possibly get his hands
in. But he was.
But he won everything apart from the league. He won absolutely everything he could have won.
Look at his honours: the FA Cup twice, the League Cup 3 times, a Champions League once, a UEFA Cup once. He won PFA Young Player of the Year, PFA Player of the Year, PFA Fans Player of the Year twice, the Football Writers Association Footballer of the Year, the PFA Merit Award he got as well. Like,
it's good memory, well done.
Well, I've got some of those in front of me.
Oh God, you gave the illusion away.
Oh, sorry. He's and it will be a sort of almost a stain upon Liverpool's history that he never did win the league with Liverpool.
No, and we are very, very lucky to have been able to grow up in his era and to watch him play and to be to have the thing to say I got to watch Steven Gerrard. We could go on for hours and hours, but I would just like to say, Steven Gerrard, thank you.
Lifetime Achievement Award.
So that was